Okay, right, brilliant. Thank you. Good morning and a very warm welcome to everyone joining us this morning. And hello as well to everyone that might watch later on YouTube. It's a real pleasure to be here this morning, and we are going to be thinking about a very topical and very big topic around Black Lives Matters, racism and white privilege. And that's why I'm really honoured to welcome Natalie along today to speak about some of the work that she's been doing, and we'll also talk about some of the work that I've been doing in this area recently as well. So Natalie, I'll pass over to you.
Hi, you're all right. Yeah, thank you for having me here today and inviting me to come along and talk about some of the work. So do you just want me to introduce some of the training that I've put together, really? Is that?
Yeah, and where you come from with getting to that point of the training as well, and what inspired you to do it, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, well, I guess looking at systemic racism in education is something that I've been interested in and focused on and activated to do something about since I started in, since I was an assistant psychologist, sort of some 15, 16 or so years ago. That was when I first started to develop it. And then sort of more recent times, we looked in our service at addressing vulnerable children, certain vulnerable groups. And so that was a few years ago, and I put forth the systemic racism in education focus again. So my principal gave me time to sort of start to develop the work and develop it into some training. And then I came across Nova Reid, who is a prolific anti-racism activist that you all need to know about, and started to sort of, I worked with her when I'm on her online anti-racism course, which is really good. Did some work with her in London and have been in contact with her for about a year or so now, and then started to really develop the work further and look at what we can all do personally in order to address this massive, as you say, issue of racism. And then also I'm activated by the fact that I'm in a biracial relationship. So obviously I'm white, my husband's black, and we have 2 children of dual heritage. And one of the things that I say right at the beginning of my training is that this does not exempt me from my racism. My racism is my responsibility to deal with, and I have to unlearn it because it is in us all, simply by virtue of our skin colour, simply by virtue of the fact that we've been born into a system that was built on white supremacy and colonialism. Now, that's quite a hard hitting thing to hear, I think, when you first start this journey. But what I sort of caveat that is what we need to understand is what racism actually is. And often when we think about racism, we think about the KKK or extreme hate or those kind of crimes, those very overt acts. But what I'm talking about here is the insidious, everyday, covert, in every single system within our society, racism that we have, and as white people, that we have benefited from that system, and it's so insidious that we are unaware of its presence, and so it is very much about looking inwards at our own selves, as well as it is about challenging and helping and encouraging people to get on the journey and join the cause as well. So that's in a nutshell. That's kind of some of what led me here.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that's where we linked up because you posted some really quite inspiring stuff on EPNET, which is the EP kind of forum, which is where we first linked up. And I think what you said there resonated with me because with the work that I've been doing around this, I'm really starting to understand and sit with that white privilege myself and read through some of the books, as you say, Nova Reid. And it's kind of made me realise that, that institutionalised racism, the things that are just every day that you don't realise. And it's hard to hear and take up. And I've just started working through the Layla Syed's Me and White Supremacy, and at the moment I'm stuck on day 1 and day 2. I'm going back and forth with that white privilege and white fragility, that that's work that I need to do and really get my head around. So
and the thing is, it is uncomfortable at first, but I would encourage people to press through that, because you do get past that, and it's this is bigger than you. It's bigger than you. It's not actually about you. Nobody's mad at you for being white. This is about us accepting that white privilege does exist, and that we benefit from it, and to use that privilege to forward the cause, really. And then, of course, as a consequence for us as education psychologists, there are children and young people within our systems that we are responsible for that are disadvantaged disproportionately in many different ways because of this as well. So, we've got a duty of care to those children to make sure that they get the benefits and the privileges that that every single child should get, but they are due as well.
And you've been actively involved in some of that work just now, haven't you, with the exam result, exam results and things?
Well, yes, because as part of my training, I sort of present quite a lot of statistics in order to, I guess, kind of encourage people to understand what is happening in education and how disproportionately disadvantaged Black and brown children are, from a level of achievement to exclusions to being included in tiering. And then when the pandemic hit and everything shut down, and they talked about stopping the GCSE and A levels, I had this thought of, oh goodness, we're going to lose a whole generation of young people here, because I knew that Black and brown children their predicted grades are only accurate on 39.1% of occasion, whereas white children's predicted grades are largely accurate. So I contacted my principal and I said, I think this is important, kind of thing, and she was like, yeah, I think it is. So I put a short paper together, very short, because I wanted people to read it, and everything was happening obviously, and she took it forward to the assistant director for Derbyshire, and he took it to the DFE. And recently in the news, it has been said that they're going to rethink university admissions, because the DFE has now said that there is, due to the systemic racism within predicted grades and bias and all that. Now, that wasn't done on my paper, by the way. There was much bigger people like the Runnymede Trust, which is an anti-racism group, that they wrote directly to Gavin Williamson. So it's not me, but what I'm saying is that everybody there is always something that we can do. Once you start seeing just how much this is, once you've had your blinkers taken off, I guess, it's you can see what's happening, and then you can see different ways that you can help to move that cause forward and just be another voice, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And there's something about not letting it slip away. I think we have such an opportunity, I can't say exactly why it's resonated with me so much at the moment, but it has. And like you say, I want to take that forward and look at the ways that I can kind of change and make a difference in the right way. Not just by getting stuck in the white privilege part, but actually looking at it wider. And I know you and I were talking as well about the recent program that was around the school trying to combat racism, and I know you're thinking about those affinity groups and that wider work as well, aren't you?
Yeah, we're thinking about lots of different ways that we can sort of bring these ideas, and not, this is, I mean, everyone talks about it, this is a movement, not a moment. So we need to make sure that we are doing something intentional, and making sure that we're not just letting this go by. So we're looking at just maybe even in our day-to-day work, when we're meeting with schools, and we're raising vulnerable groups, to be thinking about raising children from Black, Asian, minority ethnic backgrounds, because they are higher on the exclusion statistics, even when they are achieving above average. So sort of the Indian and Chinese populations tend to be coming out as high. That isn't translated into the workplace. And then there's a disproportionate representation within tiers and things. So there's all sorts of things that we can raise with our schools, and we can be saying, are these children out of class more often? Are they achieving? Are they in the higher tiers? And all those kind of things, of making it part of our day-to-day work in the same way that we might do for other vulnerable groups. So yeah, it is about that. But I really would encourage people to go on their own anti-racism journey themselves, because you won't believe how much there is to learn, or how much will open up to you. One of my colleagues described it as a bit like in the Matrix, when they take the red pill and all of a sudden it becomes very, it's something that was always there is very blatantly obvious to you now. And I think that's what activates you, because it's like this, the sense of the injustice around it, and the fact that so many people are being let down by these systems. That needs to change.
Exactly, and like you say, it can't just be a moment, it needs to be a movement. And some of the interesting things about what we're reading around white privilege was a lot of that list of 50 elements of white privilege, or effects of white privilege, comes from sort of the late 80s, doesn't it? And
oh yeah, I mean, people from the communities, Black and brown communities, have been screaming about this for decades, and hundreds of years, and yeah, this is not new. It's made into the terms like white privilege and microaggressions. They've made it into the mainstream now. That is what's new about it. The actual talk around these issues isn't. And I think that is what's really important, is that while we look at what we look at ourselves and our own inner racism, and unlearning a lot of things that we've been taught over the course of our lifetimes, and also learning about more of this stuff in order to benefit the children in our care as psychologists. What we also really, really need to do is to listen to the people with authentic experience. This isn't about us coming and taking over. Oh no, that would be like white supremacy in action. This is, I see myself as standing in the gap between the system that does the hurt and the people that have been harmed by that, but then passing that mic back, because we need to listen to the voices. And that's why it's so important for me, when I said to you last week that we get these names out there, like Nova Reid and Layla Saad, who we've already mentioned, Rennie Edo-Lodge, Ben Lindsay, Kyman Andrews. Get to know those people, follow them on Instagram, buy their books, listen to their podcasts, because that's the essential part of your learning.
It's so much, because some of the ideas that I came into this from, and I mean, literally I really embraced this through COVID, and the George Floyd thing and everything coming up. But I was listening to both Nova Reid and Rennie Edo-Lodge on the podcast over the past few weeks, and the idea that you might kind of go up and say, well, what can I do? Tell me what to do. And actually, that's so the wrong question. It is about listening. And actually, as psychologists, that's what we do really well. That's what we can really
and the thing is, I think my analogy there is, if there was a massive event in the news that was around child sexual exploitation, and it was hitting everyone, it was getting everybody talking and thinking about it, it's highly unlikely that you would go to a friend or colleague or someone that you knew that had that in their history and ask them, what can we do? Why did they do that? It's unlikely. I can't think that people would. And similarly, we've got to be careful about, expecting people that have been wounded and hurt by it to be the ones to now explain it. Racism isn't a Black and brown problem. It affects them. It isn't because of them. It's actually us that need to dismantle this system.
and move away from those binary thinking as well, because
Yeah.
I was quite stuck in the viewpoint that I was one of the good ones, and it wasn't about me,
Yeah.
and actually, you know, like say all this institutionalized racism that just happens, and my white privilege and those aspects of things, that you can't see it as good person not
Yeah.
racist, bad person racist,
Yeah.
because it's all layers and
It
shades,
is, and
isn't
this
it?
is why we've got this. This is one of the first things we have to do. Really, is get an understanding of what racism is, because we do associate it with the KKK, or you know, with hate crime. So if people called you racist, it's like and it is a very, very damaging thing that people can say to you. So what we need to do is to understand, you know, like you've just said, that the intricacies and the layers of it, and start to dismantle some of that as much as, you know, we can.
Natalie, going back to your training, who are you doing the training with, and what does it look like? Where do you run it?
Right. Well, I've done it with my service. That was the first time I did it. That was what I put it together for, my whole service. And then there's talk for me to go further into our county, sort of to work with some of the advisors in there as well. We're wondering how to adapt it for schools, or how to adapt some work for schools anyway. And I've also I'm using it because this is out of work in my church, so I'm working at looking at trying to dismantle white supremacy within the church as well. My pastor's very keen on taking that forward. So still quite early days yet with that, and it's, I guess it can be adapted to suit, you know, whatever. So.
Yeah, I think, you know, I said to you, would be very interested in thinking with you about having the training here, and hopefully other people will do that. And again, it can be a ripple effect, can't it?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
And I'm really taken as well. I'm with us talking about the idea around it being a movement, and this being something that we need to think about in the future and moving forward, and not just sort of pick up and put down again. I was really taken with a phrase that you used about drift and shift when we spoke last time.
Yeah, that's my, yeah. Well, when I first started doing systemic racism training and packages and whatever, and like I said, I was an assistant psychologist. So when I picked it up 15 years later, or however many years later, and started to re-put it back together now, found that statistically, unfortunately, things have not changed really. And so for me, that's like 15 years of drift have happened because we didn't remain focused. We didn't look at what was happening. We didn't keep the eye on what we needed to change, really. So drift happens when we don't remain focused, but shift happens when we make small intentional changes every day to the way we work, to the way we are personally and professionally, and then are able to gradually, over time, things will change. There are people doing much bigger things as well, but I'm just thinking about what we can all do intentionally every single day, and that's when we get shift.
Certainly what you were doing, isn't it? Which is
I think that's what I said. Yeah, I think that's what I said last week. Yeah,
definitely. And what are your thoughts would be good places to start in schools? Because I mean, there's lots of talk around decolonizing the curriculum and all of that sort of thing. What are your thoughts with that?
Yeah, Kyman Andrews he's an academic and university lecturer at Birmingham University, and he talks a lot on decolonization of the curriculum, so you might want to look up him. I think I do go back to this doing the work on yourself, because it will inevitably change you, and it will inevitably change how you speak to people, how you consider a situation. If a child has been brought up, you know, and you might start to consider it from different angles, and that kind of thing. Like I said, that we're intentionally thinking about making this part of our everyday job anyway. And then I've lost my thread now. I was going to say, yeah. So what? Sorry, what? How we bring it up in everyday.
with schools and how we might, I mean, I suppose as EPs as well, bringing the kind of EP role into our thinking, and because obviously we work with a range of people and the schools and the whole systems, don't we? So that almost Brenner different.
That's what I was going to say. It's about learning as a part of my training. Looks at when I've been through most of it, it looks at the end of what we can do, how we can challenge these. So when we were bringing these children up, or when these children have been brought up with us, that we can something called elegant challenging is something that I use, and I have used pretty much my whole career in all situations. It's a great it's a great system for managing difficult attitudes. That's Neil Thompson's work. I don't think I gave you that link, but if you might be able to find it. It's quite old now, but the elegant challenging is basically about the idea of moving the cause forward, remain focused on the cause, allowing people to save face, allowing for the fact that you will be just as equally at risk of saying and doing things wrong, just as they are. So to keep it in that faith of moving the cause forward. And then Nova Reid talks about ways of calling people in, and also ways of graciously responding when you are called in yourself. There's some ideas around that, about how we challenge these, so we don't just let them go, because that's what happens a lot of the time, is that these small microaggressions are allowed to just let go, and they need challenging. And I've found even in schools that not everywhere, I guess, but a lot of adults don't have a grip on what racism is or what's going on. They don't realize that there's no such thing as reverse racism, and that this is very much an issue for a very definite population. And so there's a lot of unlearning to do. And if they don't come with that kind of if they've not had that kind of time to think about it or consider it or whatever, then they're not going to be able to intentionally make those changes themselves. So, and then obviously we've got generations of children that are going through, because often we have when we were looking for a school for our children, we were very keen to choose a school that had a mix, a good ethnic mix, and which is hard to find in Derbyshire. And but fortunately they did have, relatively speaking, quite a good mix. And at that time I never thought about the mix of the teaching staff, and I don't even know what I would have done had I have thought of that, because trying to find that is nigh impossible around where we are. So there's lots of layers to this.
And that goes back to what you were saying as well about different ethnic communities, maybe even those that are known for doing well at school, sort of, as you say, kind of Asian communities quite often are very seen as very academic, but then that doesn't carry through into the workplace.
Yeah.
And you look, and I'm thinking about this with lots of diversity. It's where you feel seen and where you see yourself reflected back in the work or the arts or culture in some way in the country, the society you're in.
And that representation is absolutely key, and that's where if children see themselves in places, then they aspire to be. And we don't ever have to do that as white people when we grow up in this country. We will always see ourselves represented, so we will always have lots of options of where to go and what to do and what to pursue. And that it really is. I mean, only 1% of children's books have a black or brown main character. And so it starts right from the word go, and children do pick up on this. My 5-year-old, he had his moment when he recognized that he was different. It must be a year ago. He was really tiny, and he knew he had his moment already where he knew. Whereas when we don't realize we're white, we don't have a point in our life where we realize we're white. But most black and brown people, I would argue, certainly from speaking and reading around this, is they will have a defining moment when they realise, and it's very, very little, when they're very, very little. Certainly with my children, it was when they were very, very little. And it doesn't matter. You sort of think, well, gosh, what have I done? But really, it's a barrage of messages that are coming out. It's like a tsunami. You can't control everything. So when they're not represented in those books and those resources and things that are used in school, then they start to make the links themselves.
Absolutely. And I mean, you know, that goes across, you know, again, many diversities, but that idea of defining yourself as something different and that mirror of the society that you're in, and the fact that as a white person in the UK, I don't need to make that sort of definition. It just didn't come to me, and that was one of the things from the schools program and reading these books that's brought me up and made me go, well, I don't actually have a white identity. I have not needed to even consider that type of thing, because it's not been part of my thinking, and that in itself has been hard to get my head around.
I know it is. There's lots to think on, isn't there?
You know, I brought up the sort of arts and things like that. So I love arts and exhibitions, and it's been something I've been thinking about for quite a long time, about that representation of different things. And you know, I suppose I'm quite mindful that some of the things that I enjoy have got a multicultural element to them, but there is still the racism and lack of understanding there. I was completely taken aback yesterday, and this seems quite trivial, but I love fashion magazines. The current editor of Vogue is Edward Enninful.
Oh yeah, and he was racially profiled.
You know, he was turned away by a security guard trying to get into his own workplace and sent to the loading bay. You know, that happened yesterday, or you know, this week. So
and this is all the time. These are everyday microaggressions that are happening all the time. And like Nova Reid will talk about those as being like paper cuts. On their own, they might not seem you know, that bad, but over time and repeatedly, or she relates them to like snowflakes that are gradually over time you get a devastating avalanche. You know, this is the first thing. It doesn't matter what he did, how much he's achieved, the first thing somebody saw was the color of his skin. So it brings into focus that whole notion of I don't see color. Is absolutely, it's one that's what people will refer to as one of the worst microaggressions, when people say I don't see color, because clearly and blatantly, you know, we do. And not only that, by saying that, we're discounting and dismissing their entire lived experience.
Definitely. And I mean, I'll hold up my hand. I was guilty of that, feeling that I was colorblind, and that actually that was a good thing to be, that I wasn't putting any emphasis on anyone. We were all equal in that way. And as you say, now I'm seeing how that discounts everything they're going through.
And doesn't recognize the volume of privilege that we carry, and the fact that we, you know, that everything that we have done and achieved and gained over time has been touched by the privilege of our skin, and you know, we should be able to recognize that, really.
Absolutely. And as we discussed at the beginning, I'm still going through feeling fragile, having that white fragility, and uncomfortable about that at the moment, but I know I can work through it, and hopefully, as you say, stand in a truer sense of solidarity and an ally for doing that.
Absolutely. And it's Nova Reid talks about it as a healing process for all. We're all in this. We're all in this system of white supremacy, built on white supremacy and colonialism. And I think as you go through this, you do push past it, and you do realize it's a bigger. It's not about you. It's about making life and experiences and things better for people from the Black and brown communities. That it's so it's a much bigger picture. And once you've got past that, it just it's. I'm sure it'll come up in different ways, because you get cut out because it's so insipid. So it'll come up again, and you're like, oh wow, there's another layer. let's go another layer deeper. You know, because like I said right at the beginning, I'm not exempt from this either. I'm on the same journey as you are. I just might be at a different point. That's all it is.
And you know, it's only going to be for the good moving through, because I always think of things as rippling out. So if you can understand one culture or your own culture or something differently, then you're going to be more respectful and have more empathy across the board, aren't you? So you know, it's about being better people.
Absolutely.
I'm aware of this. I've just noticed the time, and we've filled our half an hour. We said that we would get chatting on it, didn't we? So I hope that has given people things to think about. I can see there's a couple of questions in the Q&A box. Should we just have a look at those quickly, Natalie? Shall we have a look what's there? So there is a question here which I think you covered. It says, have you delivered the training in schools in your county? But you did mention.
We're thinking about, we want to do that, and we're thinking about the training that I do at the moment. It was a whole morning, so it's thinking about what will be best for school staff and everything like that. So we are working towards that. Yeah,
definitely. And there's another couple of comments really keen to know more about your training, where we can access this. So I'm pretty sure that we will keep in touch, and as you know, we use our Southend website to share resources and things that other people are doing. So maybe we can work together to share some more resources around people.
Yeah,
be good. And I think there was another question here that just says, could you recommend a first article to read or one TED Talk webinar apart from ours? What would that be?
I would direct you straight to Nova Reid's TED Talk. Not all superheroes wear capes. I would start you there with her. You can subscribe to her podcast as well. And I would then recommend reading Renée Edo-Lodge and Layla Saad, either Renée's first and then Layla, or that's the one, or the two alongside each other. I think Layla's book is very much a workbook. It started as a 28-day Instagram challenge that became a book in the earlier part of this year. And it's something that you sort of work on yourself. But Renée's book really brings the statistics and the history and that behind it as well. So I would go Nova first. I'd go Nova, Renée, Layla, or Renée and Layla at the same time. But also hook up with those people on Instagram that I mentioned, those three. Ben Lindsay, he's just written a book called We Need to Talk About Race. That is brilliant as well. He's focused on racism within the church, but his book is applicable to all. It's really, really insightful, and he has a brilliant Instagram page to follow. And then Kyman Andrews, who I mentioned earlier, who's the academic in Birmingham, who was taken on Piers Morgan a couple of times actually, and he's really good about the decolonisation of the curriculum. But yeah, those are the ones that I would recommend first. Robin DiAngelo has written a book called White Fragility as well. There are many different ones out there.
I mean, for me, one that podcast I listened to recently, I really like Brené Brown.
Yes, Brené Brown's another, She
spoke to Ibram Kendi. And that was quite another really wake-up podcast for me. And he's developing, or has developed, loads of books which are for young adults. I think he's just bringing out one for younger children to explore the anti-racism thing with him. And I picked up another book off my shelf, which I read a few years ago and I've gone back to, which is a kind of a wider sense of things. It's Diversity by June Sarpong, and I noticed something in the comments around wider cultural and racial issues, that I think this is a book for anyone that wants to look at a real range of how we're diverse in our society and how to embrace that and work with it. So
Nova Reid does an online course, as I've told you as well, where you can actively work on your own inner racism. I would highly recommend that. And then I just remembered Mina Fombo TED Talk, Do Not Touch My Hair, which is a great one about hair touching. It's prolific. That's thinking about my daughter, that is literally like trying to stop a tsunami, trying to get people off her hair. So one of the benefits of social distancing is that no one can come near her to touch her hair. So Mina Fombo does a really funny but very insightful and very thought-provoking TED Talk as well.
That actually comes up because I was getting the links ready for Nicole, and Nicole has put loads of links for people in the side. That was one that comes up next after Nova Reid's. It's there as people will be able to see it. So brilliant. Thank you so much, Natalie.
Thank you for having me.
What would you like to end us on? What's your final inspirational thought?
I'm going to end with something from Layla Saad. I think I'm going to say, what I keep saying to my people who work is, do the work. You won't regret it, but do it because you believe in something greater than your own self-gain. Do it because you believe every human being deserves dignity, freedom, and equality. Do it because you desire wholeness for self and for the world. Do it because you want to be a good ancestor. Do it because you no longer want to intentionally or unintentionally harm Black, Indigenous people of colour.
Thank you. That's goosebumps, and I think that is a good way to send people off into the day. Thank you so much, Natalie. Speak to you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.